it's Cat Lover, let's get right into it. The mid to late 2000s was the, let's just say, confusing time for the Sonic series. Everyone was constantly on edge with the announcement of each game, and the series wasn't doing too well. Even fans who loved Sonic since 1991 were thinking of letting their passions go, and letting the blue blur fade into obscurity, but something, maybe perseverance or luck, kept Sonic and its fans' love for it alive. I don't think the 2000s was such a horrible time for Sonic though. You had the Advance trilogy, Sonic Adventure 2, and Sonic Heroes in the early 2000s, all being good games, depending on who you ask. The mid-2000s is what brought uncertainty and inconsistency with it. Sonic Rush and Shadow the Hedgehog released in the same year, two very different games, and this definitely did not help people solidify their opinions of Sonic. Then the infamous Sonic 06 came out in 2006, and this was the telltale sign of a definite objective problem. It's like no matter what came out afterwards, people would still subconsciously be thinking of 06, but I'm not as close-minded. Sonic Rush Adventure released in 2007 in the quote-unquote dark era of Sonic. Not as many people talk about it as Sonic Rush, and sure it's not as iconic, but it's still solid. More unnecessary and probably inappropriate Cat Lover lore incoming, but I remember going through the saddest, most life-changing event in my life just a few days after I got this game, and it was my solace for a very long time. I've learned to look at it without the rose-tinted glasses though. Sonic Rush Adventure did a lot of things better than its predecessor and added a lot of things to the game to make it feel more fleshed out and like you're getting your money's worth. But is more content really the answer? Does it make it better? We'll see. Before we get into our topic, I'd like to say that the gameplay footage in this video is from Cyberman65. Please check them out. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started! Sonic Rush Adventure moves and controls just like Sonic Rush, and that's a great thing. Of course, this is number 2 out of the 3 Boost games that were released on the Nintendo DS, so it feels really great. Just like last time, you play as 2 playable characters, Sonic and Blaze, the latter of which will be playable when she appears in the main story. Sonic still moves faster, Blaze still fake double jumps higher, both are able to do tricks for the audience, so it's the exact same as it was in Rush. Some people may think of this as being a bad thing, or possibly even lazy due to the controls being the same, but I say it's a good thing. Alongside these basic mechanics are places in the game where you'll have to adapt to some unique sections, such as controlling minecarts or doing QTEs after being shot out of cannons. There are other things that involve the player suddenly having new things thrown their way, but those are for later sections of the video. Not much can be said about the gameplay mechanics that hasn't already been said in my first Rush video, but there is one thing I can touch on: Sonic Special Stages. Like in most Sonic games, the Chaos Emeralds do literally whatever they want and disappear after Sonic uses them, and now it's the player's job to get them back. Instead of an actual special stage, instead of a really confusing and reality-warping labyrinth, you're out on the sea. Get used to it, you'll be seeing a lot of it. With your water bike and an opponent, Johnny, you're always passing through obstacles to a finish line in the middle of the ocean. You get there first and you claim a Chaos Emerald. There is something about this that I dislike, but again, more on that later. The race itself is incredibly fun and can be pretty challenging, but it's overall very fair and gives you the high-speed excitement you wanted. Speaking of using the water bike, there are other vehicles you use throughout the game that control and work differently. Throughout the game, you'll be traveling across the seas via the sailboat, submarine, water bike, and a hovercraft. Each vehicle excels at doing different things. For the sailboat, it's good for lengthy, extended travel above water and has bullets, flamethrowers, and bombs in its arsenal to thwart enemies. It's slow, but it gets you where you need to go as long as you stay out of shallow and icy waters. The submarine, of course, takes you underwater and is typically used to avoid any hazards present on the surface. To make it through your adventure, you have to complete a rhythm game section for however long you'll be traveling. It can get quite tricky at times. The water bike is the most fun to use in my opinion, as you can use it to trick off of ramps and use a built-up gauge to boost through obstacles and enemies. It's not very good for getting through hazards or going long distances though. Last and definitely least, the hovercraft. It excels at getting through icy waters and has a deflect mechanic that allows you to spin away enemy projectiles and attacks. It also comes with a laser you can shoot rapidly or charge up, all at your discretion. All the mechanics for each vehicle is fun in a way, and definitely hasn't been seen before, so I consider it to be a good thing, in moderation, which we'll definitely talk about later. Sonic Rush Adventure adds a lot to how the game plays, whether that be in certain levels or during transportation. It's an interesting concept for sure, it can be looked at as innovative. Now, on to our first con. As I've said before, this game's means of travel could be fun and exciting, in moderation, but this game doesn't have very much of it. See, Sonic Rush Adventure isn't like other 2D Sonic games where you finish a level and immediately appear at the next one. You have to travel there yourself, so there's a bit of confusion on where to go, and the game makes using the vehicles essential to beating the game. It completely strips you of choice, which I don't inherently hate, but I don't like it here. You have to find a way to your next destination, and though you have a bit of assistance and navigation, it can get mind-numbingly boring. One thing I didn't mention in gameplay is that you have to constantly upgrade these vehicles. Throughout the game, you need to collect materials necessary to not only travel further with these vehicles, but make them more durable while using them. How do you get these materials, you ask? In each level, there are specific types of materials you can receive, so in order to upgrade these vehicles, you'll need to replay these levels again, and again, and again, just doing the same thing over and over again to progress the game. These ventures can be easier or harder than the last, sure, but that doesn't mean there's a good amount of variety in these sections. Traveling can feel like it's taking forever, even if it's only been a minute, due to how monotonous and repetitive these gameplay sections can be. It'd be one thing if these sections weren't so heavily emphasized and utilized throughout the game, but it's such a core part of gameplay that I can't help but mention it. I'm not against new means of getting to levels, but in 2D games, there isn't much you can do that isn't extremely disruptive or inconvenient. It's not the worst thing in the world, and I can't say it's bad, but it's definitely something that should have had more thought put into it. Now, let's talk about our next pro. The bosses in this game are actually pretty good by 2D Sonic standards. Not only are the bosses creative, you're also able to fight a ghost pirate and travel inside of a giant fish, but the setup in a lot of these fights are different. Sure, there's some waiting around, but it's quite frankly only for the sake of preventing players from completing the bosses too quickly. Many of the bosses' weak points are available for longer periods of time than in Rush, and if not, then you can find your own way there. The game doesn't put you in many situations where you're sitting around for what feels like hours, waiting for the boss to move so you can have one clear shot and one clear shot only. Even in bosses where this isn't possible, you'll still be able to see the variety and uniqueness available to you. The boss fights aren't all the same in terms of how you need to go about beating them, and I like how different they can be. Being surprised by bosses is what makes games fun. Instead of just feeling like it's only there to impede progress and kill time, these bosses put more emphasis on using the game's mechanics this time around. Fake double jumping and hovering sees more use outside of the levels due to how open and freeing the boss fights feel. You have plenty of agency over what you do in these boss fights, and there are even some that I dare say are some of the best in all of 2D Sonic. Big Swall has so much going on despite the player being in such a tight area, and again you can attack almost whenever you feel like it. Deep Court is an amazing final boss, and feels a lot more quick, snappy, and engaging than Sonic Rush's true final boss fight. Every boss stood out well on its own, but these two really reminded me of how much fun the game is and how it gives the player some freedom to do what they want. The tones and aesthetics for these bosses are also a lot more well done, the background seeming to have more effort put into it than in Rush. The bosses are genuinely fun, and that's not something easily found in 2D Sonic games. God, I sound like a broken record. Anyway, let's get into our next and possibly biggest con. Where do I even start? So, Sonic Rush Adventure is a lot longer than Rush, and it's for a variety of reasons. The story is more fleshed out, and there are new and plentiful game sections outside of the levels and bosses, but is that really a good thing? Are these sections necessary to make the game feel like it's worth the money, and more importantly, are they fun? I can't help but give a nuanced answer. To start off, there's too much emphasis on replayability. I'll reiterate, you'll need to upgrade vehicles to complete the game. You need the material to do so, meaning you have to replay the levels. The better your results are, the more material you get. You can't just do any level you want either due to the types of material you need. It can suck ass to just be a few rings or material short and have to replay a level again. If someone wants to go back and replay the levels, it should be their choice to do so. It should be based on their preferences. While on the topic of replaying levels, if you want to get the Soul Emeralds, you'll have to manually talk to a guard, go into your missions tab, and replay bosses as Blaze. It just seems so out of left field, and kind of like a last minute addition to avoid repeating how she got the emeralds in Rush. I would have rather they had just done that, honestly. I'm not against replaying levels or bosses, but I'd rather not get locked into doing something to progress the game. The game of controlling absolutely everything you do is not only frustrating, but a giant buzzkill. Another example of the game forcing you to do what it wants is means of transportation. Sure, you have a choice between 4 vehicles, but is it really a choice, or will you be forced to just do the sailboat and hovercraft a million times? These aren't the most fun vehicles to use either. Speaking of transportation, let's also talk about how inconvenient it can be. When mapping out your route, you need to make sure you're doing it in the most efficient way possible. If not, you can get stuck in the middle of the ocean right before you hit an island that's right in front of you and have to turn around. It just feels like a poor attempt at padding out gameplay time, and if you want to 100% this game, good luck. Now, let's mention a pro to lighten the mood. This time around, the level design is a lot more well thought out and forgiving. I can't name the last time I fell into a bottomless pit or been insta-killed in the game, other than in Sky Babylon and Pirates Island. Even these sections are a lot more bearable to go through, and you won't see them as often as you would in Rush. I've gotta say, the levels in this game look absolutely amazing. Since this is a new universe, the gimmicks of the levels aren't the same as they were before in other 2D games. The scenery and themes are a lot different, but you can see some similarities. You have Plant Kingdom, which is a lot like Mushroom Hill from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1, and is the first level in the game. Sky Babylon is like an air level, mimicking Sky Altitude from Sonic Rush in a lot of ways and adds challenges not previously seen before. Blizzard Peaks is a lot like Ice Cap from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, with the snowboarding sections and all. It really helps players feel familiar in a new environment, but also taken aback by how much there is to take in. The gimmicks in these levels are top-notch, and really let you know the environment you're in as well as adds to the gameplay. There are anchors falling from the sky in Pirates Island, fire you can zip past in Sky Babylon, and you can control a minecart with various gems in it. It reminded me a bit of Donkey Kong Country, and I honestly don't know if that's a good or bad thing. There are so many gimmicks each level has to offer that I can't talk about all of it, sadly. What I can say though is that these gimmicks don't negatively interfere too much with the level design. Instead of gimmicks needing to be used and being frustrating, the gimmicks are easy to become accustomed to and aren't really hard to use at all. They all just feel like they're there to enhance gameplay and play with objects in the environment, but I can see why some people think it's unnecessary or annoying. The dolphin riding section in Pirates Island always killed me as a kid, so I get it. Even so, there's a clear improvement in the level design from Rush in this game, and it makes the levels much more fun without being boring. Unfortunately, we gotta move on to the next and probably most inconvenient con. The story in Sonic Rush Adventure isn't bad by any means, but it's hella long for no reason. I understand that the game may have wanted to flesh out the new character and relationships between already established characters, but I feel like it all just kind of fell on its face. Let's start from the beginning. Sonic and Tails get into a massive storm, they get sucked in, and when they come to, there's a raccoon poking them with a stick who totally won't be annoying as hell later. They're unaware of where they are, so they try to find clues, they meet with Blaze again, and things go from there. Not a very difficult premise to understand, and I like its simplicity, but I wish it had stayed that simple. The game has a glaring problem, that being how characters interact with each other, and how badly the story wants to explore the new world that Sonic and Tails are now in. The characters spend forever speaking to each other, saying things that aren't exactly relevant or just yapping it up. I'm all for watching the characters I love goof off and not doing anything at all related to the main story, but these characters are never doing anything interesting. Whenever the stupid long story isn't rearing its ugly head, Marine is being, well, stereotypically Australian, Sonic is giving cheesy one-liners, Blaze is getting annoyed by Marine, Tails is doing nerd shit. You do it once, it's cool. You do it 100 times, I start to not care. The world building in this game is lackluster, with it being hideously focused on or boring as hell, or both. Nothing that happens makes me at all interested in Blaze's home or the state of her universe. First we're aimlessly traveling, then we're solving puzzles, then we're fighting robot pirates, which I admit is kinda cool as hell, but I just feel like it's all filler. We unfreeze the polar bears, don't care. We find the coconut crew, don't care. We see Captain Whiskers and Johnny a bunch, okay, that I kinda care about. But like I said, fun intriguing stuff like that takes a major backseat. And to be honest, I would have liked to see Johnny interact with Blaze more. Sonic already has enough green rivals, Jet, Surge, and Scourge, if you count him. If the game really wanted to build on Blaze's home life more, I feel like Johnny should have been her rival and not Sonic's. And if the counter argument is that Johnny doesn't match Blaze's energy enough, they could have changed his design and personality, maybe even made him a girl, but I digress. The Sonic crew explore more, the Jeweled Scepter, an important asset of Blaze's world, is stolen and they get it back. After facing Big Swell and getting all 14 emeralds, the true final boss is now open to you. And lo and behold, the entity behind all these robots trying to take over and kill everyone was no other than the two maniacal Eggmans. Seriously, no one in the Sonic crew saw that coming. The Eggmans show up way too late in the game's story, right near the end, and it's not even really a surprise. I'm not saying the game should have had a repeat of what happened in Sonic Rush, but seeing them a bit, whether it be in cutscenes or the characters talking about them, would have been nice. Then when losing the fight, Eggman Nega tries to destroy everyone just for a chance to win. Even Eggman is very taken aback and sitting up to be against it. At least now we know why Blaze is so cynical and cold in Sonic Rush. Dude just tried to obliterate everyone, including himself, due to his own ego. Yikes. Then even crazier, the day is saved by Marine, who just has powers for whatever reason. And it wasn't mentioned at all before, is it shown again? It's like the game had all these interesting sub-stories to play around with. Robot pirates, Marine developing powers, showing off more of Eggman Nega's almost psychotic nature and how it affects Blaze, and didn't utilize them as much as they could have. It makes me sad knowing that we could have had a lot better world building and character development for Blaze and Marine. As it stands now, the story feels bland. Despite being overwhelming and kinda boring, the story in Sonic Rush Adventure isn't bad at all. Just an obstacle, and it could be so much more. Now, for our final section in Pro, let's talk about the arts and animation. Sonic Rush Adventure has more cutscenes and dialogue sprites than Rush, and it all looks gorgeous. Sure, it's a bit blocky, but I feel like it adds charm and identity. The DS isn't exactly known for being super powerful. With the game taking its story much more seriously, we're able to see a lot more expressions coming from the characters, especially the main crew. Various emotions not yet seen before are shown in the dialogue, sprite art, and I'm all for expressiveness. I know it's kinda off topic, but one thing I kinda miss is how expressive Sonic characters used to be. It's not like in 3D titles in their cutscenes, where the characters aren't as expressive as they could or should be, at least a good portion of the time. At least here I can soak in the characters' emotions and reactions a bit better. Even with the game being 17 years old, I can see how much effort they put into them. The cutscenes are well animated and show off a lot of important and pinnacle moments in the game. It really helps you resonate with the story and events a lot more than before. Technically, it may not be the best looking, and the in-game sprites should be better, but I'm really satisfied with what this game gave me. Now, we can finally rate the game. Sonic Rush Adventure tries its best to improve on old ideas and make them better. It may not always work, and sometimes the execution is sloppy, but everything is clearly done with good intentions. The main gameplay is more or less the same, but with more quote-unquote mini-games that are repetitive and could have been improved on more. The vehicle sections were a great idea, but could get frustrating. The bosses are some of the best I've seen so far in me going back and replaying 2D Sonic games. The game can start to get bloated with too many ideas that didn't receive appropriate amounts of attention. The level design is a lot more beginner-friendly, but doesn't treat you like you're dumb. The story isn't that interesting and should have been severely cut down or altered greatly. The arts and animation were both appreciated and made the game feel a lot more solid. It may not seem like it, but I try to be positive about the games I play, especially if they're Sonic games. Not every idea is going to be executed perfectly, and there may be a few stinkers, but I feel like it's important to make mistakes and experiment. There's nothing interesting to be had if things stay static. Sonic Rush Adventure tries ideas. Some come out the gate strong, others don't. It doesn't make it bad, just flawed. So, I give the game a 7.5 out of 10. Not flawless, but then again, what is? Sonic Rush Adventure is a fun game that Sonic fans should play at least once. It doesn't get as much attention as Rush, and didn't sell as well as it did either, but I just feel kinda sad that it's being ignored and essentially abandoned. Everyone likes to focus on either their horrendous Sonic games or their near-perfect ones, no room for titles that don't fit into either category. So just to give this game a little love, Sonic Rush Adventure is good. I've always felt that way about this game. Anyway, what do you think about the game or this video? I'd love to know your opinions in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe or whatever it is that other YouTubers say. I'm Cat Lover, it's been real. Peace.